Ian,
Hello, Chris.
welcome to my humble abode.
To a new world.
You are speaker 24. You are the end of an around the world adventure. How are you?
I'm doing great. I've not been as nervous as my first date. This is really freaky, but it's fun. And I would only do it for you and all these folks who care, who signed up, who just want to have a peep at how we really live. All this stuff behind us. I've been tidying the office all morning. The wife loves this.
Because of what's behind me, or
Oh no, it's just normally there's like shirts and bits hanging where you drop stuff, and the wife's like, "What are you going to do today? You're not going to be on camera. Yep, you need to get that place tidied up."
uh, you know, 3 years ago when I started the ITSM Weekly podcast, I referred to you back then as the best head of hair in service management.
Washed it for you especially.
Thank you.
But I can't do a thing with it. It must be time of life.
Well, yeah, I don't know. We'll get you some mousse or something. Some people might not know, but the last time I was with Ian Clayton, we were sitting side by side watching the sunrise over the Pacific Ocean from a beach in Australia.
Awesome.
Beautiful day.
You rarely get the chances. I live, I'm a block away from the Pacific Ocean here, just the other side of Del Mar, and we just don't bother to drive over that hill and down and enjoy it. So that was a really rare experience.
It was good. It's one I think about whenever I'm having a really stressful day. So why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself to everyone, give us a little bit of an overview, and then we'll just pop right into your slides and I'll disappear.
Yeah, I was going to do a bit of a very quick overview as I get into the slides. You know, the standard way of saying, yeah. So we just go straight for it.
Yeah, just go straight for your slides. So go ahead and hit that green. It's underneath the chat, share screen, and then we'll get this tunnel effect where we see me and everything else. And then
I'm going to go desktop.
Yep.
And then I'll fire up the PowerPoint, and hopefully away we go.
Yep.
And you'll be able to tell me that you can see it okay?
I can see it full screen, and you are on fire.
Excellent. Rare as a technologist to get this.
I'm disappearing. I'll see you when you're done.
Thanks, Chris. Well, hello. I'm Ian Clayton, and I'm the principal at Service Management 101. Bit of feedback there. I'm not sure if you hear that. Whether you're listening live or to a replay, I'm pleased you're able to join me for this session hosted by the Service Desk Institute as part of what I think is a unique and exciting Tomorrow's IT Service Future Today global event. As I said to Chris, I've not been as nervous as when I was on my first date, and I really thank you for your interest in this topic and the investment of your time. And I'd like to thank, of course, those folks who gave me the opportunity, our hosts, the entire TFT12 team, all the presenters, and Chris, who I wish I'd known in my childhood, as I could have used him as my #1 excuse to my mum. He made me do it, Mum, would have been what I would have said. And especially those of you who voted for this session. In this time together, I'll be exploring, I want to be your guide on an exploration of service management past, present, and perhaps future. So welcome to the next generation service management thinking for the age of the customer. As I said, a few quick words about myself, as Chris was trying to get me to get into. I've got too many years in IT that I want to own up to. I've put 38 up there. And I've worked in almost every role from a peripheral operator putting paper on printers to a data center manager. More recently as a sort of a marriage counselor for business and IT organizations. My experience includes working for Ross Perot's EDS International team during its startup, and it's during that previous life I sort of realized my first customer-centric empathies were born. Now, some of you may recognize me as the author of the Universal Service Management Body of Knowledge. That's actually a series of books, nicknamed the USM-BOK. And that sort of ended up an effort to provide a Rosetta Stone for the language of service management and everything that's out there. I'm going to try and expose you to as much of that heritage as I can. In more recent years, I've become a fellow pioneer to many on the business side of how to apply outside-in thinking to service businesses and IT organizations being performance managed as service providers. I've also rather accidentally found myself rescuing, rather like rescuing puppies, IT service management projects from common pitfalls and flipping their approach, like an extreme makeover sometimes, but you see these programs on TV when they flip houses, to an outside-in one, where they're able to actually have a look inside and inspect and get a handle on and manage and improve those customer experiences that people talk about using their services. Quick slide on how to contact me. I thought I'd leave this in because I might be covering some concepts, methods, or some words that you're not familiar with. So if any of the information I cover in this session prompts a question, I know there's going to be time at the end that I'm going to make, but there'll be a number of ways you can get to me or through the Service Desk Institute folks, and we'll try and get those answered for you. Now, if you're listening live, as I said, we'll be reserving some time at the end. If you're listening to a recorded replay, there is, of course, email, but I also run a complimentary support site. And I don't think we abuse the privilege of having your email on that. But as Chris said, Twitter works, and well, Skype is it's there, but give me a warning before you try and Skype me. Topics. Well, what I'd like to do today is explore with you, have a quick chat about the service society we find ourselves in and the age of the customer that I'm now reading more and more in research papers, analyst reports, and hearing at conferences. Now, I'm one that believes that we've always been in the age of the customer and that it's rather a pendulum that swings from the product, what we're making, to the customer. And with this economic climate, I think the pendulum swung far hard to the side where the customer has the say. I also want to have a chat about why I believe traditional ITSM projects fail. And looking back, I'd like to retrace the often forgotten origins and heritage of service management thinking. Looking forward, have a chat about the elements of a next generation service management setup. From a combination of recent discussions, I'm going to focus on 4 key pieces and try and weave in the experiences of some of the more successful service businesses around us today. And for now and for today, how to start or restart your service management journey with a customer-centric approach that's that outside in. I want to share with you something that a person who's actually living in San Diego, one of the old pioneers, offered in one of his books. The loss of focus on the customer as a human being is probably the single most important fact about the state of service and service management in the Western world today. It was Karl Albrecht, and some of you may recognize that. He said this in his book, The Only Thing That Matters, and he went on to talk about customer centricity. But that was published in 1992. Yeah, 1992. Get your hands on it. It's an awesome reference. Albrecht, along with a number of other pioneers of service management, and I'll touch on some of those shortly, warned us we'd already entered the service society in the age of the customer. And today, it's clear we live in that society with connectivity and commoditization and all around us, and with that comes consumer choice and the empowered customer. And that takes us down to the fact that successful outcomes and the service experience dominate and differentiate products and services. And our experiences using products and interacting with these service providers shapes our perception of value. Our level of satisfaction is formed from whether we achieved our desired outcome, with what experience, and of course at what cost. And this feeling, and it is a feeling, it acts as the basis for loyalty and advocacy, whether we go back, whether we tell people. And it forms a general perception in our minds about the quality of a service and the capabilities of who's providing that service, including if it's a service business. Of course, there are a number of factors that are heavily influencing this service society. And they include, well, and especially for those of us who work in and around enterprise IT, there seems to be a blurring. I was over in Germany a couple of weeks ago, and there was a lot of discussion from some of the experts who focus on human behavior, and they were becoming increasingly concerned that the workplace, the line between where you work, the home and the office, was becoming increasingly blurred, and that enterprises were encouraging this because some of them saw the opportunity to reduce costs by doing that. So organizations are openly encouraging workers to work from home or remotely to telecommute. Of course, infrastructure is becoming even more decentralized in as much as it no longer is hosted singularly within an IT facility. And that's, of course, thanks to cloud computing and things like virtualization and a whole host of third-party services. I use a lot myself, and it's so much easier to deal with these folks, it seems. Customers expect total mobility, epitomized by the term A3, meaning they can access their work and information anywhere, anyhow, anytime. This anyhow is associated with another new concept of bring your own device. That's probably a year to 18 months old this time around. But within the past few years, we've seen the advent of a haptic, a touch interface, commonly termed 4S, which represents swipe, swipe, select, submit. And any 12-month-old will tell you more about that. More recently, even voice direction and instruction. And I'm reminded of one of my favorite films, the old 2001 Space Odyssey, and Dave's request of Hal the computer to open the pod bay doors. And my friendly GPS system warning me that the turning's just ahead, even though it was light years behind last night on my Amtrak journey back from LA. Now, these are all combining to dramatically change the expectation of consumers and customers and how they'll interact with technology as part of their daily lives. The essence of this new emphasis is the service experience. Now, many IT organizations are hearing about this reimagine yourself, become the new IT, and they're aware of this demand, and where the focus has changed from being a technology farmer and innovator to someone who really knows how to exploit some of this technology to provide a superior service experience and improve customer productivity and be a business growth enabler. The new IT must operate and accept it's being performance managed as an information service provider. It's got to provide a customer service experience on par with non-IT service businesses. And it must deliberately and continuously engage that customer or prospect, listen to emerging needs in real time, and garnish feedback on its performance based upon customer satisfaction levels. A sign of success is for IT to actually become invisible technology. More often, visibility is because of an issue or something you've not done right. And it's less or a less than suitable experience noticed by the customer, and it's much simpler. It's a much simpler proposition to market your value when you are actually invisible to the customer because things are working okay, as expected, as required, of course, from the customer perspective. Now, there's a number of IT management imperatives that are out there. They include, but of course are not limited to, this call for be more agile and responsive in how we make our IT investments, immediate and complete alignment of what IT does, the programs and initiatives, with the business intent and goals. And of course, if you're going to use this technology, use it cost effectively, please, and that's where some of the cloud comes into play again. And the old pay-go. People are looking at this as a utility through which they can access the information they need. And they're looking at these types of cost models. Now, IT's traditional response, of course, is to re-engineer practices or to improve processes, the background processes. Some embark on a progressive journey through levels of maturity in their capability, using one or more process frameworks as a reference point. Others decide to conform to a national or international standard, thinking there's safety in that particular reference point. And of course, one of the most common right now is the ISO IEC 20000-1, Part 1, of course the 2011 edition, which actually is a really, really significant improvement. But any and all of these are encapsulated in that term, IT service management. So I believe traditional ITSM is failing the customer and its management sponsors. Why? How many of these questions can you answer? So let me take a diversion for a minute. How many of these questions can you answer? What business are you in? Now, when I normally ask this, I didn't invent this question. I'm going to touch on the chap who did in a moment. But when I ask this question, you often get the puzzled look, and that's actually a, a planned or deliberate response. It's phrased that way. It's that dramatic. What business are you in? And it's a famous opening of one of the pioneers that I said I'll cover in a moment, Ted Levitt. Ted Levitt, Theodore Levitt, unfortunately he's no longer with us, would ask this question of service businesses, service providers, knowing full well they would struggle to answer this correctly. Paraphrasing the way that he would go about it, and I'll point you to the book in where this is there's more detail on this in a moment. He said, if I would ask a railway company, they would answer, we run trains. If I asked an airline, they would say, we fly planes. But if I asked a company like Disney, they would respond differently. They would say, we're in the business of providing our guests with a positive, memorable vacation experience. But I thought you ran theme parks. No, they would respond. That's how we do it, not why. Who are your customers? The original service management would continue with thinking like this. And in my practice, people say, Ian, there's too many to mention. Well, pick one. So if you want to play along, pick one. Pick a customer. It's like a card game. Pick one that's at the forefront of your mind. Let me ask you another question. What activities do your customers, or that customer you picked, perform in pursuit of success? Again, if you feel overwhelmed by the number of activities, just pick one. It doesn't matter what one. It really doesn't. We can come back to this time and time again. How do you help your customer perform these activities? As before, you can continue to use that one activity you chose, and if we were in a workshop mode, we would start to investigate the internal work effort required to support that customer activity. And perhaps more importantly today, what do your customers experience when they use your services or interact with your organization? Again, we could continue to use whatever you chose earlier if you're playing along. And how satisfied are your customers with the help that you provide? At this point, there are many ways to survey the level of satisfaction of that customer that you chose. One increasingly used by today's service businesses is the Net Promoter Score. And I'm not going to go into that in any further detail in this presentation, but in a session, but please check it out. Net Promoter Score, NPS, is likely the simplest method. And the sort of way that it works when used properly is you ask a customer, or you ask the customer following a situation, would you recommend the product or service you've just received to a friend or colleague? So it's very personal. Would you recommend this to a friend? The customer is presented with that scale ranging from 1 to 10, and the numbers 1 to 6 indicate a level of dissatisfaction. Numbers 7 through 8 indicate neither dissatisfaction or satisfaction, no man's land, and a score of 9 or 10 indicates some degree of satisfaction. In every case, the response will likely prompt the provider to engage in some way, perhaps to follow up directly. What I see happening in ITSM is that traditional ITSM thinking that we're surrounded by can result in what some people have called in the past a human car wash. A place that processes people and their requests through the facility rather than ensuring a desired outcome and creating a total experience and feeling of value. So, it's my position that traditional ITSM is inside out, but fixable. We can make an easy adjustment. And not how successful service businesses manage service delivery and support. In economically stressful times, management teams may focus almost entirely on internal processes and improving their productivity and downsizing and so forth. And decisions are made based upon internal knowledge and instincts. This is inside-out thinking, and it can cause you to lose contact with your customers. This is particularly true for the enterprise IT organization. And there's a number of indicators, and I've got the first one here. I'm going to go through just half a dozen of these, but there's a whole heap of indicators, and I wanted to share some of them with you. And if, like me, you get that wave of embarrassment, it's because I've been there too, and in fact, I still do this sometimes. The view of our customers, indicator number one, what they care about, and how we serve them, differs significantly across the organization. Key service staff are unable to state easily, clearly, and briefly who our customers are, what we do for them, and the basis for measuring and confirming customer satisfaction. When compared, more time is spent on internal issues, looking at our processes and conflicts, than on discussing the customer need, their expectation, and the service experience that they perceive. Few of our decisions are explicitly driven by customer needs. Now you can add to that one, or the customer experience that we've delivered, again from that customer perspective. Number 5, a couple more to go. We have trouble adapting to normal variations in the customer operations, and we get blindsided by changes in their strategy and even their behavior. Number 6, we find ourselves trying, or actually we are deliberately trying, to apply one rigid practice or process framework to all customer situations. Now I'm going to call that from here on consumer scenario, because that is the phrase that the outside inners use. And number 7, we do not know how the efforts that we're making relate to the interests and the success of our customers. So it's my case, and it has been for the past 18 months, it's time to press reset and rewind on that service management button you have in your hand. Why? Because ITSM should mean to all of us, it's service management concepts and methods applied to the challenges of an IT organization being performance managed as a service provider. "50 years of service management." Okay, I thought I would just show you some of the books that I've found that have a wealth of service management knowledge in them. Now, they're in no particular order, but I want to draw your attention to the top left. I know this could be a bit of an eye test. I'm sitting watching this on a 30-inch LCD, so I can see it a whole lot better than you can. But perhaps stay with me. Top left, Marketing Myopia. It's a $10 book you can get on Amazon when it's in stock, written by Ted Levitt. You can also get the Audible version of that at audible.com for a couple of bucks. Everybody in your IT department, if you're doing ITSM or thinking of it, should have that book in their top pocket. The next one, Service Management, about 1984, following 7 or 8 years of research by Richard Norman. And we can thank the Scandinavians for inventing the term service management. Richard Norman, again, no longer with us. I hope that's not a trait for the pioneers. That's the old cover of the book. You can find the new cover's got a black cover with a minor editorial update. Collector's piece. Please get your hands on these. This is the heritage when we're using the term service management. Then we've got Carl Albrecht, a fantastic book, Service America, that sort of leverages what Richard Norman was doing, early 1990s. An even better book perhaps from him, The Only Thing That Matters, that I cited earlier, about customer centricity, and so on. There's a fantastic heritage, and much of the language that we see today is actually from The Experience Economy by Pine and Gilmore, which I'm going to get into a little bit with front stage, backstage activities when you're going in to map a customer experience. And more recently, Patricia Seibold, anything Patricia writes that's customer-centric is a gold mine of guidance. Barbara Bund, who really went out on a limb to try and explain her view on the outside-in corporation, and one of my mentors, Steve Towers, that I'm going to say a word about in a moment. But let's get into the heads of these folks. This is the heritage that we can tap into. Theodore Levitt, who is an amazing character. He was editor at a Harvard Business Review, and when asked upon his retirement if he had an effect, he said, well, Let me put it this way. When I arrived, it was a magazine written by people who can't write, for people who won't read. And I think I've made a big difference there. He was a pioneer in product and service marketing, who posed that question I asked earlier. What business are you in? Then he continued with his own questions to try and explore and expose how customer aware you might be, but how customer centric you should be. And Theodore, Ted, to me, is the father of customer centricity. And these articles are not so much white papers and articles, but manifestos. And he had a powerful argument that we should stop defining ourselves by what we make and what we produce, and instead reorientate ourselves towards the customer, their needs, and their satisfaction. Richard Norman, the father of service management. There's that book, 1984. But what he discussed in that book is, I find myself surrounded by it yet again today. The role of services in today's society, how technology was advancing and how it can actually enable the customer. And the need, what that does, it drives the need for a streamlined service management system behind the scenes. Other key concepts that he pioneered, moment of truth. He looked at self-service and said, use it carefully. You've got to design it from the customer perspective. He's tried to specify the moving parts of a service delivery system. He introduced, for the first time, something other than a product, a type of product that was a service, and the package that went around it in the way of how much human support you might need to put in. And he started to talk about, holistically, service management system as an entity, as an aspiration. And again, as I said, he started to try and unpick the moving parts. And yes, you'll find service request, and you'll find a lot of familiar suspects in these books. And what these folks were telling us is that service management, yeah, it's about managing a service, but it's more about managing service as an experience. And although outside in wasn't liberally sprinkled in their writings, that was the spirit of what they were saying. You've got to leave the cubicle. You've got to leave the safe haven of your workplace as a service provider and experience what you're doing and what you're delivering from the customer, the outside in perspective. You've got to look from the outside in and be true to that. Playing around with that Wordle thing on the web and putting just some of the words in, and then looking at this fun diagram just to give us a breather. The language of service management has a lot of words up there that traditional ITSMers might not be familiar with. Yeah, of course, outside in's being pushed around right now, but I'm not quite sure that people fully understand how simple that concept is. Moment of truth, a fundamental means of measuring customer satisfaction. It's got to be one of the first pieces you put into your toolkit is how to find those. We're hearing more about customer engagement. I was unable to listen to Richard's presentation that preceded me. I'll be doing that right afterwards, but I'll put money on the fact that that's part of the language that he was exposing us to or reminding us of. And the service encounter. I'm going to pick some of these off as we start to move into what service management, what I believe it really is about, and where you begin and how you can actually flip your traditional ITSM approach overnight. Don't throw it away. Press that pause, add this type of thinking in, and the whole thing becomes so much easier. So this language of service management was built for service businesses. And as I said, it's my experience, much of this is foreign in the education that we receive and in the conference proceedings that we might be part of. It's pretty much foreign to much of the ITSM space. So we're lacking some key concepts, some key terms that a lot of these pioneers put a lot of time into. And I believe this language needs putting back in as part of the next generation service management cycle. Let me take that one term and let me put this one to bed to start with. Matt in Belgium of BMC, thanks very much, but I wish I owned the term outside in, but it wouldn't be fair. This, set it free. It's more valuable free. Outside in thinking is a very simple philosophy and a management approach that ensures you place the interests of the customer ahead of your capabilities. So it's a bit scary for some. It's almost like giving the customer the steering wheel. And yes, if there are those of you out there that say or believe, we can't allow the customer to set the priority, we need to have a chat. Yes, you do. It's okay letting the customer set the priority. It'll push the problem elsewhere, but the problem that it creates and where it pushes it is easier to handle elsewhere than you trying to jiggle or referee customer priority of what they're trying to do. And as we heard earlier, perhaps outside-in thinking puts an explicit reason, customer reason. It embeds it in every decision made by the service business or the service provider. And organizations that apply or adopt outside in as a focus on satisfying their customers, they find they deliver a much more powerful combination of what the outside inners would call a successful customer outcome and a superior service experience. That's the game. That's the combo we're after. Now, if you add to that behind the scenes, of course, we like to do it efficiently and make a profit or not lose our shirts in the process. That's basically what some people call the triple crown. Now, outside in also helps you measure your success and target improvements from that customer perspective. Stay with me. I've been flipping organizations this past year doing this, and there's been a sigh of relief, a breath of fresh air in the IT departments where they go, well, this is a whole lot more easier when you've actually got some of the language and some of the methods to take this on. Now, a shout out to Steve Towers. The good news is, as far as I know, as of this week, Steve's still around. Steve is a northerner. Now, I'm from London, so anything north of the River Thames to me is a northerner. Pragmatic, plain-speaking person, and I'm very thankful to Steve. He's been my mentor. So Steve lives and operates on the dark side of the business. And he's really resurrected this term and really pushed it forward and has helped others to understand what it really means. And he's one of the industry noted experts over on the business process side and realized that we can be quality assured processes are no guarantee of a satisfied customer. Co-founded the Business Process Group. You'll find them on LinkedIn. Dig a bit deeper and look for the Outside In Process Group. Great fun over there. And while you're over there, you'll probably bump into the customerthink.com website, which is where a lot of these folks hang out and share research and their hands-on experience. Now, Steve was fortunate enough to be inducted into a Hall of Fame recently, and there he is outside of the Prime Minister, number 10 Downing Street door, and you can bug Steve at that website and just tell him that Ian said I should bug you. He'll probably never forgive me for that, but that's okay. These are the guys who hold the jewels. They know how to do this, and they're working with major businesses to help them stay customer-centric. And he's unselfishly helped me grasp the fundamentals of outside-in thinking in recent years. So, I do believe there was an urchin called Mr. Patrick Bolger who showed you some of this earlier. I realize it's an eye chart again. But the outside-in, inside-out continuum is something that we use. It's in the USM book, the book that was mentioned earlier, to try and illustrate to people or to expose them to the language they're using and where it might reside on like a span of relevance from customer-centric thinking to infrastructure-centric thinking. Now, there's nothing bad about thinking infrastructure-centric. It's all about balance. So some of the words nearer the infrastructure end, I mean, this particular diagram, it positions key concepts and those commonly used terms, as I said. Some of the words include infrastructure, item, asset, event, alert, incident, process, even service is regarded more as an inside-out term than a customer-centric term. Customers don't buy services, really. They buy results. They buy an experience. They buy coolness. They buy an outcome. That's what they buy. So what's important to note here is that traditional ITSM frameworks contain a preponderance of the language on the right. This puts the adopter of that language in a reactive mode from the get-go. It's also important to note it is practically impossible to plan a transformation journey from the right-hand side, inside out, to the left, outside in. And experience has shown you need to press pause on your current approach, leave the building, and re-enter from the left, eventually reconnecting with where you left off. So you have to go outside in to be customer-centric, relevant. Now this thing, customer satisfaction, what we also discover when we trawl through these books and discuss with these pioneers their research, well, one, traditional ITSM professionals and consultants struggle seriously to explain how customer satisfaction is measured, and this is a fundamental failing. Service management thinking developed by the business is clear on this matter and offers specific guidance. It says customer satisfaction is designed, measured, and managed from the moments of truth within a service encounter. And I'm going to explain briefly those two terms any minute now. And that customer satisfaction leads to loyalty and perhaps, hopefully, to advocacy, and this lowers operational and support costs to retain and engage customers. And every day, each one of us has many service encounters. And I'll be blogging about the Amtrak one again to go alongside my earlier blog, Mooning Amtrak, I think. It's an episode where a customer comes into contact with any aspect of a product or service organization and gets an impression of its quality. A service encounter is often prompted by a service request, and within each encounter, customers, provide, there are consumer actions, there are provider actions, there are interactions between the two, and that can include technology. There are moments of need where something new happens, and there are moments of truth. And at the core of that consumer scenario, the customer situation, is a service encounter and user stories. I said that wrong, really. A consumer scenario is at the core, of course, of every service encounter. And there are user stories wrapped around that scenario. A scenario is Ethel in marketing, her job at head office is to put in orders for strategic accounts. And we can look at the ambiance, the place where she works. They would call that a service-scape. The general working environment. So it's background context. The user story is where we've sat down with Ethel, and Ethel has explained to us something that happened yesterday, and we've taken note of that. So these two things go hand in glove, and then that gets us into the span of the encounter, where it started and ended, and inside there, those gems, the moments of truth. Now what we're going to find out is that there are some rules to service encounters. Knowing where and when they occur is a mandatory activity for a service organization. They can service encounters and the support activities they initiate are pre-designed into a product and service offering, and they can span third-party involvement. Where an encounter starts and ends is negotiable. Service encounters play a vital role in customer satisfaction and and thus to the service provider's overall success, and are represented in the service management system by a service request and its pathway, its journey across the provider organization. Now these moments of truth, these are vital interactions between the consumer and the provider, and they represent an instance where the customer has an opportunity to form or change that perception about whether you know what you're doing. They can, the perception can include the quality of service and the capability of the service business or the service provider organization, as we mentioned earlier. They are the indicators for customer satisfaction, and every encounter has at least 3 moments of truth: greet, using it, thank you, or exit. Now we use the magic number 42 to dig deeper, and the 42 represents the 4 E's that a service business or provider has to get a handle on, all viewed from a customer perspective: the customer expectation, that encounter, the experience, and the emotional genie that can be inflamed or escape from the bottle should the customer not get what they expect, it doesn't work as they expected, or they have a unsatisfactory experience. And there are 2 equations, 2 vital service equations. Value, which really takes us back to the 1950s and the Society of American Value Engineers. Very simply put, the results I get compared with the cost of getting them. Expectation, what I need and want expressed as requirements compared with your capability expressed as offerings. So the shortcut is V equals R over C, and expectation equals R over C. This next generation architecture, there are 4 key pieces that we speak to. So let's get a little bit technical for a moment. You're going to need a customer engagement strategy, a means of reaching out, making contact with your customers, keeping in contact in real time, and understanding their vibe, their perception, their needs, their wants, their requirements, and weaving that into your objectives and aligning your operational objectives with theirs. A service request management mechanism, so where they can ask for stuff, that's a technical word, so they can order or request things. You can check their entitlement, and you respond, you fulfill. A means of supporting them, not just break fix. I'm going to talk about that for a moment on the next slide, but making sure that they get maximum value out of using your services. And finally, I think really importantly, a continuous improvement program. There's a couple of initials there, Kappa, AFA. If you look up Kappa guidelines under continuous improvement, you'll find corrective action, preventive action, and a whole wealth of information on how businesses use continuous improvement programs, both in manufacturing and in the service arenas, to improve. And AFA is a US MBOK add-on. That's to adapt because something else has changed, or to F for perfect. That's my London accent speaking there because we couldn't use another P, and that's to actually perfect or add functionality. So Kappa AFA means we can now process the 4 main reasons for change through our improvement system after we've engaged, we've looked at what customers are asking for, and our support, the noise generated by support, which is translated into some market analysis of what our customers are up to and how they feel about us. Support. The pillars of service support. Now, I think I presented on this at the HDI conference last year. I'm going to give you a quick run through. There are 4 pillars. Break fix, which some people might say is incident. Well, it's more than that. It's break fix. Helping hand, which is anything other than an issue in the way of helping a customer. Service recovery, which is really important. If ever you've lost your bags on a plane, they'll invoke a service recovery program, which is an authorized response by the provider to a service failure with the goal of returning you, the customer, to a specific level of satisfaction. So they're recovering you as a customer and your level of satisfaction. And complaint and compliment. And that's rather undervalued, what should be anything else that goes in that column. And next generation service support is very much a case of we're a major piece of the engagement mechanism. Our job is to deliver on all these 4 pillars bound by the middle backbone, the 4 E's. We manage the interactions, we generate the feedback or help that, and we help the whole problem. What's the impact? What's the opportunity? Should we add functionality? Let's put it through the continuous improvement program, and let's tell the customer what we're up to. Cycle. So as I said, I'm going to hose you down on that one. So closing down, outside in and inside out. There are 2 approaches that you can take. You can continue with the inside out approach, which in business language says you're basically going to look at the plumbing behind the scenes, and you're going to do some work down there in the hope that it's going to have some effect on the level of customer satisfaction. Or you can take an outside in approach. You can go find the consumer scenarios, put them in a 42 wrapper, remember the 4 E's and the 2 vital service equations, package them as a service request as incoming, and then be honest to the original principles of service management. Find out what actions the consumer performs, what interaction that causes, what internal work effort it results in, and then split that work effort into front stage, customer visible, and backstage, customer invisible actions. And in there, you'll find moments of truth and key interactions, and that's where you focus your improvement efforts. So the philosophy of outside in, when you attach it to that continuous improvement idea, is to map, inspect, and improve one service encounter a request at a time as part of an ongoing continuous improvement program. That means we need to be aware of consumer scenario language and the method to capture that, the stories. We need to use problem management skills to look at, is there evidence of a problem, or do I think there's a problem or an issue or an opportunity? We need to see if we can go into a workshop mode where we actually go map, inspect, and put in our observations and our ideas and place our findings onto a problem queue where, using much of today's newer technology, next generation thinking, folks can vote on, hey, that looks like something we should be moving forward through the organization. Now, for those of you out there who speak or are aware of Agile Scrum can kick in here. It can help us develop sprints. It can time box the problem queue through to the change schedule. So we can now sequence the work, provide visibility, and give stakeholders a voting mechanism for deciding what pieces go through. Of course, we can put our thumb on the scale as well as a service provider. So, let me ask you again. This is the language that the outside inners and the service management pioneers were using. How often do you go on a service safari? Now, what that is it's a situation where you observe your customer in their natural habitat. Other tactics are, you've probably heard of them, Undercover Boss, after the famous television program, or Mystery Shopper, act like a customer, interact with your products and services, and experience what your customers experience. Build a schedule of the combination of all of those three, and then start to catalog those scenarios. And while I'm at it, ask yourself, are you asking yourself what process to implement first, or what services to catalog, instead of, as I've just suggested, what consumer scenario to capture and what service encounter to inspect? If you are, I'm back to my original suspicion that we are in the age of the service society, and you might be using traditional ITSM concepts and methods that lack much of the core and original lexicon of service management. Therefore, you're accidentally inside out, and you risk, or you may be visibly failing the customer. We need a next generation service management approach that is outside in and true to the origins of service management. And that journey can start today with an approach that engages the customer, understands and improves their service experience, and exploits a program of continuous improvement. And the path to operational internal excellence is through understanding where the dumb interactions are, and like someone who may use lean thinking, eliminate that waste. And the path to service excellence is through understanding where the moments of truth are, and recognizing this heritage that we've got, and thinking and acting outside in. Now, I think as Mr. Pat Bolger said, there is education outcoming. Watch out for this next week. So I've included the slide because I know that these slides will be up for posterity. And Chris, Mr. Dancy, if you're there, I'd like to hand back to you now to see if anyone's still awake and whether we have any questions out there. So if you can walk me through that, I'm going to escape out of my screen. And needless to say, I've got 2 more slides I've included in the deck, which is any questions and, oh, by the way, the span of the USM BOC.
Yeah, if you just click the screen share button again, yeah, there you go.
Yep.
You're good.
Okay, so, Chris, how about that for a hose down?
I need to smoke a cigarette, and I stopped 3 years ago. So we got a lot of feedback. So and a lot of people asking a lot of questions. First, thank you for doing this. Customers in this era of big data, so where we're saving, we're all the phone's collecting all this information about us, and what it's not collecting, we're volunteering to put in. Mm-hmm. Do you see this in your engagement strategy in any way, or? I mean, it's kind of a crazy tech question, but
no. Funnily enough, one of my clients, and I don't mind mentioning them, Lockheed, there'll be an article in the HDI Support World, January, February, on exactly that topic. You've got all this big data. How do you slice and dice it? And so Lockheed's adopted outside in, they've just nailed it on the top of what they're doing, which is really healthy. It means they're open to this, and they're now starting to look at all the data that they collect, both internal and external, because They don't know who the customer is yet. It could be someone who's internal to the organization who's struggling to get something done that's important. And so they're now using that little philosophy to slice and dice the data. And that's the article that the the chief of ITSM for Lockheed, is penning right now, because they see this as a nexus. Big data is very valuable, but I need to get a handle on how to look at it. And I think that this does, again, I wasn't able to listen. I'm going to run after this to what Richard went through with the user voice. Yeah? But
yeah, and we've actually received a lot of feedback over the last 24 hours about people who took time to sleep or eat. But yeah, so I mean, it's all there. You'll be able to get it on audio only, slide only, all that other kind of stuff. A lot of people do recognize your work as a pioneer. You're asked to speak around the globe. We're just at the top of the hour, so I just want to wrap up with you personally, and you can get out to Twitter and respond to folks directly. Okay. Is the burden of carrying such a profound message ever lost on your psyche?
Oh, it sometimes feels really lonely, but it's been encouraging the last couple of months. Yeah, a lot of people, I think when they actually just step back and ask those 4 simple questions that we posed earlier. I mean, who are your customers? What are you here for? I mean, you got guys who are scared witless of cloud computing because the business is going to make that decision. They're going to go where there's the path of least resistance to getting the results they want. We are back in this ultra-connected world. Me and you were chatting, was it earlier this week, about the Gutenberg Museum and the impact that printing had upon information and access to it. We're going through this again like flared trousers.
Yeah, I mean, there's these revolutions of communication. There was the spoken one, and then the printed one, and then mass media, which was one-to-one, but never in this new interactive, in this fourth wave.
Exactly. And so we've got a lot of data, as you said. There's all different ways to look at it, and you can certainly look at that big data from the inside out. You could look at it from how people are using your product and what issues they're having, all valuable. But if you then flip it again and you look at it from the outside in, what experience are we delivering and how can we get into that information to use some of this technology you see where they're going to put equipment down shopping malls that look at what you look at. I mean, that's already there and we might not know it. And they're going to be looking at the experience they're setting up. Disney do this. I mean, they plan it.
When I was just at, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but yeah. I'll try to share a photo later. But if you go out to my Flickr and look for Chris Dancy, I was at South by Southwest last year, and they had bulletin boards you'd stand in front of, and then it would show you the bulletin board, but then they'd show you a video of you next to the bulletin board, and all the people in the crowd would be highlighted with all of your preferences.
It's scary. And in the simple world we've got today with ITSM, I mean, we've got a simple job. We've got to make sure that business gets what they need done. And we get distracted with shiny objects like ITSM that say, build this, build that before you get success. I disagree. Time and time again, you get a real kick from sitting down with Ethel and just watching what she's doing and going through the embarrassment loop of, did we really make you do it that way? And she's like, well, it's the only way we know how to do it, and we hate IT or we don't like IT. And then you bring that back, and you have a brown bag, and you say to guys, look what I discovered. And they go, well, that's ridiculous. We can fix that. I have faith that IT people have a good heart, and if they just are exposed more often to the end result, they'll bring that back and they'll fix it. And it's not a project, it's what IT should be doing. And I believe
it is called support, and you kind of need to have a good heart if you use the word support. Mm-hmm. These aren't complex framework questions. These are human questions. But we'll let the multi-billion-dollar industry that built that hierarchy answer that question too.
Well, and I know you got to go, but you just took us back to that very first comment from Carl Albrecht that sometimes we forget there's a human involved. And that was what service management was about. Service is not a service, it's service. It's the experience and the outcome. And if we stay there, it's a lot simpler.
Well, what you've done, I mean, we've talked about you, we've had you on the podcast. I think I might have interviewed you once, I don't know, for years. And I was recently speaking to Ken Gonzalez in Calgary, Canada, when I was up speaking at the Share IT event. Great event, by the way.
Yeah.
Shout out to Peter. You know, to me, the greatest crime in professional ethics that's been committed in the last 15 years was that your work was not more mainstreamed, more quicker. And it was not because of your efforts, and it was not because of the need, but it was because the crushing effect of keeping people enslaved to the ideology of hierarchical thinking took over. And I just want to salute you. I know it's been a long time coming, and you deserve all the rewards that you're seeing now.
Thanks very much, Chris. And a big shout out to all the folks who follow me and bug me and push me on Twitter and all these other channels. It's fun. My dad said if you learn something new every day, you'll be a smarter person than me, Gunga Din. So bring it on.
All right, we're going to go ahead and close with a little video we had made for the conference. Thank you, Ian. Thank you, everyone watching. If you were here today and you want to hang on, just like we did at the beginning, we didn't plan to do it. We're going to have an impromptu get-together with about 6 or 9. We're going to try to fill the hangout with 9 people right after this, starting at a little after top of the hour, and we'll tweet out that link. So it'll just be the kind of behind the scenes. But thank you, everyone. Thank you, Ian. And we'll play out to our video. Thanks, Ian.